The following program was made possible by a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Expect an interview.
Welcome home.
How was your trip?
Are you home to stay now, sir?
What are your immediate plans, Mr. Clemens?
Immediate plans. To return to Stormfield, my house in Connecticut, and spend Christmas there with my daughter, Jean.
Are you going to tell us any jokes, Mr. Clemens?
I don't know. That's what you want, of course. And yet everything human is pathetic. The secret source of humor itself isn't joy, but sorrow. There is no humor in heaven.
Mr. Clemens, is it true that you're writing an autobiography to be published 100 years after your death?
Oh, yes. I find it one of the most interesting works I've ever undertaken. There's something very pleasant in thinking that the person you're writing about, everyone who may have any personal affection for him, is dead. I find I can take such large, calm views of people. There's never been an autobiography that's been written with quite the detachment from all anxiety about what the readers may think of it, or its writer, as this one of mine.
Mr. Clemens, does that mean you're going to tell the absolute truth?
I've lied so much that people won't believe me when I tell the truth. I've found I've never told a lie so big, but that someone had sublime confidence in my veracity. You see, most liars lie for the love of the lie. I lie for the love of truth. I disseminate my true views by means of a series of apparently humorous stories. If any man can do that, and finds he can disseminate truth through the medium of falsehood, he should never speak the truth. And I don't. Yes, in my autobiography, I'm writing my own unvarnished, unbiased opinions and impressions. I don't have to worry about my contemporaries looking over my shoulder. I'm free of all that.
When do you expect to finish the autobiography, Mr. Clemens?
Just when they send for the undertaker, no sooner.
To judge from appearances, that time's a long way off.
Well, I don't know about that. All the palmists and clairvoyants tell me I'm going to die. But they don't state any date. I think a little more of their predictions if they give me the date.
How is your health, Mr. Clemens?
My chest troubles me now and then, a gripping here. But Mr. Payne doses me with a glass of hot water or a pill, and that makes everything right again. It's amusing, don't you think? Everybody says how hard it is that we have to die. That's a strange complaint coming from the mouths of people who've had to live. Now, if you'll excuse me, boys, my daughter Jean is waiting for me.
Look, there's Mark Twain.
you are, Jean. Look what...
Mother, no. It's to be a surprise. You promised. You'll
Here.
see it on Christmas. What are those? Why are they sending telegrams? What's happened?
Nothing's happened.
But what are the telegrams?
Read them. They're messages of condolence.
What? Condolence for whom?
Oh, for me. I imagine it was the reporters that met me on the boat. They must have made it appear in their stories that I was dying.
It's nothing to laugh at, Father.
Of course it is.
It isn't. You must telephone the man at the Associated Press right away and tell him that you're all right.
Why bother? It makes no difference.
But it does. What if my sister were to read about it in a paper in Germany? What would she think?
You're right, of course.
I hear the newspapers say I'm dying. The charge is not true. I would not do such a thing at my time of life. I am behaving as good as I can. Merry Christmas to everyone. Sign it, Mark Twain.
What's the matter?
I don't like to hear you doing that.
Doing what?
Treating the idea of your dying so lightly.
It's best to treat it so. Because there's nothing serious about it.
I can't kiss you goodnight, Father. I'm getting a cold. You might catch it.
Good night, my dear.
Good night, Father.
Who is he?
What's he doing in this nightshirt? What does he want?
I'm Mark Twain.
He says he's Mark Twain. He says he's Mark Twain. He says he's Mark Twain. He says he's Mark Twain. He says he's Mark Twain.
Where you all gone to?
Oh, Mr. Clemens. Mr. Clemens. Miss Jean is dead.
At 7:30 this morning, I woke and heard voices outside my door. I said to myself, Jean is starting on her usual horseback flight to the station for the mail. Then Katie entered, stood quaking and gasping at my bedside. a moment, then found her tongue. Miss Jean is dead. She was an epileptic, and she'd been seized with convulsions and heart failure in her past.
Excuse me. Is there anything you need?
No, nothing. I'm setting it down, everything. It's a relief to me to write it. Furnishes me an excuse for thinking. I lost Susie 13 years ago. I lost her mother, her incomparable mother, 5.5 years ago. Clara has gone away to live in Europe, and now I have lost Jean. How poor am I, who was once so rich? I dreamt I was born and grew up and was a pilot in Mississippi, and a miner and a newspaper man in Nevada, and had a wife and children. This dream goes on and on and on. Sometimes seems so real. I almost believe it is real. I was a soldier once at the beginning of the war, and I was hunted like a rat the whole time.
Do you hear anybody?
Are they coming? Be quiet.
Listen. Fire!
The thought shot through me that I was a murderer, that I had killed a man who had never done me any harm. That was the coldest sensation that ever went through my marrow, and I couldn't drive it away. The taking of that unoffending life seemed such a wanton thing. And it seemed an epitome of war, that all war must be just like that. The killing of strangers against whom you feel no personal animosity. My campaign was spoiled. It seemed to me that I was not rightly equipped for that awful business. I deserted. The Confederacy fell. I I've been a prospector. I know payroll from poor when I find it, just with the touch of the tongue. And I've shoveled silver tailings in a quartz mill a couple of weeks and acquired the last possibilities in culture in that direction. I was a newspaper reporter, 4 years in cities, and so saw the inside of many things. I was some years a Mississippi pilot and familiarly knew all the different kinds of steamboat men. A race apart and not like other folk. I still keep in mind a certain wonderful sunset which I witnessed when steamboating was new to me. I stood like one bewitched. I drank it in. The world was new to me, and I had never seen anything like that at home. A broad expanse of the river was turned to blood. In one place, a long, slanting mark lay sparkling on the water.
That slanting mark on the water is a sign of a bluff reef, which is going to kill somebody's steamboat one of these nights if it keeps on stretching out like that.
In another place, the surface was broken by boiling, tumbling rings that were as many-tinted as an opal.
Them tumbling boils means a dissolving bar and a changing channel there.
Where the ruddy flush was faintest, there was a smooth spot that was covered with graceful circles and radiating lines, ever so delicately traced.
Those lines and circles in the slick water over yonder is a warning that that troublesome place is shoaling up and getting dangerous.
The shore on our left was densely wooded, and the somber shadow that fell from this forest was broken in one spot by a long, ruffled trail that shone like silver.
That silver streak in the shadow of the forest is a break from a new snag, and he's located himself in the best place he could have found to fish for steamboats.
High above the forest wall, a clean-stemmed dead tree waved a single leafy bough that glowed like a flame in the unobstructed splendor that was flowing from the sun.
That dead tree ain't gonna last long. Then how's the body ever gonna find his way through this blind place at night without that old landmark?
When I had mastered the language of the river and come to know every trifling feature as familiarly as I knew the letters of the alphabet, I had made a valuable acquisition. But I had lost something, too. All the grace, the beauty, the poetry had gone out of the majestic river. All the value any feature of it had for me now is the amount of usefulness it could furnish to encompassing the safe piloting of a steamboat. You sometimes wonder if you've gained most or lost most by learning your trade.
No, sir. There ain't no such thing as an accident.
Whenever a thing happens that you think is an accident. I was a lecturer on the public platform a number of seasons.
It ain't no accident at all. It's a special
And
product.
so I know a great many secrets about audiences. You look at my Uncle Lamb. What do you say to that? That's all I ask you. You just look at my Uncle Lamb and talk to me about accidents. It was like this. One day, my Uncle Lamb and his dog was downtown. And he was a-leaning up against a scaffold. Sick or drunk or something. There was an Irishman with a hod of bricks up the ladder along about the 3rd story. His foot slipped, and down he come, bricks and all. And he hit a stranger fair and square and knocked the everlasting aspirations out of him. He was ready for the coroner in 2 minutes. Now,
People said it was an accident. Accident? There weren't no accident about it. It was a special providence. And it has a mysterious, noble intention behind it. The idea was to save that Irishman. If the stranger hadn't been there, the Irishman would have been killed. People said special providence? Sure, the dog was there. Why didn't the Irishman follow the dog? Why weren't the dog a fighter? For a mighty good reason. The dog would have seen him a-coming. I learned secrets about audiences not to be got out of books, but only acquirable by experience. I was a publisher and paid one author's widow general grants, the largest copyright checks this world has seen. In the aggregate, the book paid Mrs. Grant about $500,000. I was an author for 40 years. On an ass for 75. 7 years ago, I spent a week in Hannibal. When I was at the railway station ready to leave, there was a great crowd of citizens there. I saw Tom Nash approaching me across a vacant space. And I walked toward him, for I recognized him at once. He was old and white-headed, but the boy of 15 was still visible in him. He came up to me, made a trumpet of his hands in my ear, nodded his head toward the citizens, and said confidentially,
Same damn fool, Sam.
The last quarter of a century of my life has been pretty constantly and faithfully devoted to the study of the human race. That's to say, the study of myself. For in my individual person, I am the entire human race compacted together. I've found there's no ingredient of the race which I do not possess in either a small or a large way. The shades of difference between other people and me serve to make variety and prevent monotony, and that's all. Broadly speaking, we're all alike. And so, by studying myself carefully and comparing myself with other people and noting the divergencies, I've been enabled to acquire a knowledge of the human race, which I perceive is more accurate and more comprehensive than that which has been acquired and revealed by any other member of our species. As a result, my private and concealed opinion of myself is not of a complimentary sort. It follows that my estimate of the human race is the duplicate of my estimate of myself. I don't believe an author ever lived who created a character. It was always drawn from his recollection of someone he had known. Sometimes, like a composite photograph, an author's representation of a character may possibly be from a blending of two or more real characters in his recollection. But even when he is making no attempt to draw his character from life, he is yet unconsciously drawn from memory. I remember when I was a boy, I saw a brave gentleman deride and insult a mob and drive it away. 40 years later, I let Huckleberry Finn tell about it. The nearer it got to noon that day, the thicker and thicker was the wagons and horses in the streets, and more coming all the time. There was considerable whiskey drinking going on, and I seen 3 fights. By and by, somebody sings out, "Here comes old Boggs, in from the country for his little old monthly drunk. Here he comes, boys."
Clear the tractor! I'm on the warpath, and the price of coffin is gonna rise. Where'd you come from, boy? You prepared to die?
Nah, he don't mean nothing. He's always carrying on like that when he's drunk. He's the best-naturedest old fool in Arkansas. Never hurt nobody, drunk nor sober. Here he comes again.
Come on out here, Sharon. Come out and meet the man you swindled. You're the hound I'm after, and I'm gonna have you, too. You're a cold-hearted, thin-lipped skinflint, Sherwin. You hear me? You hear me name you for what you are? You're a scoundrel, Sherwin. A two-faced, cheating scoundrel. You're a thief. You're a yellow dog, and I've come to finish you off. When are you gonna show your face?
I'm tired of this, but I'll endure it until 1 o'clock. Till 1 o'clock, mind you. If you open your mouth against me only once after that time, you can't travel so far, but I'll find you.
Your time has come, Sherwin. You've been a cheating and a swindling one day too many. Boggs is on the warpath. Yeah, you tangled with the wrong man this time, Sherwin. I'm gonna...
Boggs! Oh, you damn fool. Now drop it. It's past 1 o'clock now.
Oh! Oh, Lord, don't shoot!
Murder in Sherburne. He ought to be lynched.
Hey, go down! Come on! I've got these
The idea of you lynching anybody, it's amusing. The idea of you thinking you had pluck enough to lynch a man. Because you're brave enough to tar and feather poor cast-out women that come along here. Did that make you think you had grit enough to lay your hands on a man? Man is safe in the hands of 10,000 of your kind. As long as it's daytime, you ain't behind them. You didn't want to come. The average man don't like trouble and danger. You don't like trouble and danger. But when only half the man, like Buck Harkness there, shouts, lynch him, you're afraid to back down. Afraid to be found out to be what you are, cowards. So you raise a yell and hang yourselves onto that half a man's coattail. Come raging up here, swearing what big things you're gonna do. Now, the thing for you to do is to droop your tails and go home and crawl in a hole. If there's any real lynching to be done, it'll be done in the dark. And when they come, they'll bring their masks and fetch a man along. Now leave! Then take your half a man with you.
Hypocrisy, envy, malice, cruelty, vengefulness, seduction, rape, robbery, swindling, arson, bigamy, adultery, and the oppression and humiliation of the poor and the helpless in all ways have been and still are more or less common among both the civilized and uncivilized peoples of the earth. About 3 in the morning, while wandering about in the house in the deep silences, as one does in times like these, I visited Jean's bedroom. She had a surprise for me, the thing I've often wished I owned, a noble big globe. She'll never know the pride I take in it, and the pleasure. I was getting acquainted with Jean in these last 9 months. She'd been long in exile from home, and she came to us 3/4 of a year ago. The war prayer. It was a time of great and exalting excitement. The country was up in arms, the war was on, in every breast burned the holy fire of patriotism. Daily the young volunteers marched down the wide avenue, gay and fine in their new uniforms, their proud fathers and mothers and sisters and sweethearts cheering them with voices choked with happy emotion as they swung by.
The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people.
In the churches, the pastors preached devotion to flag and country and invoked the God of battles, beseeching his aid in the good cause, in outpourings of fervent eloquence which moved every listener.
And the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and it shall come as a destruction from the Almighty.
A war chapter from the Old Testament was read. Then came the long prayer. The burden of its supplication was that an ever-merciful and benignant Father of us all would watch over our noble young soldiers and aid, comfort, and encourage them in their patriotic work.
Bless them, shield them in the day of battle and the hour of peril. Bear them in thy mighty hand, make them strong and confident, invincible in the bloody onset.
A stranger entered and moved with slow and noiseless step up the main aisle.
Help them to crush the foe. Grant them imperishable honor and glory. O Lord God, Father and Protector of our land and flag.
The stranger touched the minister's arm, motioned him to step aside, which the startled minister did, and took his place.
I come from the throne, bearing a message from Almighty God. He has heard the prayer of his servant, your shepherd, and will grant it, if such shall be your desire after I, his messenger, shall have explained to you its import.
If you would beseech a blessing upon yourself, beware, lest without intent you invoke a curse upon a neighbor at the same time.
You have heard your servant's prayer, the uttered part of it. I am commissioned of God to put into words the other part of it, that part which the pastor, and also you in your hearts, fervently prayed silently. He commandeth me to put it into words. Listen. O Lord our Father, our young patriots, idols of our hearts, go forth to battle. Be thou near them. With them in spirit, we also go forth from the sweet peace of our beloved firesides to smite the foe. O Lord our God, help us to tear their soldiers to bloody shreds with our shells. Help us to cover their smiling fields with the pale forms of their patriots dead. Help us to drown the thunder of the guns with the shrieks of their wounded writhing in pain. Help us to lay waste to their humble homes with a hurricane of fire.
Help us to wring the hearts of their unoffended widows with unavailing grief. Help us to turn them out roofless with their little children, to wander unfriended the wastes of their desolated land in rags and hunger and thirst, broken of spirit, worn with travail, imploring thee for the refuge of the grave, and denied it.
For our sakes who adore thee, O God, blast their hopes, blight their lives, protract their pilgrimage, make heavy their steps, water their way with tears, stain the white snow with the blood of their wounded feet.
We ask it in the spirit of love.
Of him who is the source of all love, and who is the ever-faithful refuge and friend of all who are sore beset, and seek his aid with humble and contrite hearts. Amen. Ye have prayed it. If ye still desire it, speak. The messenger of the Most High waits.
It was believed afterward that the man was a lunatic. because there was no sense in what he said. You don't believe I should publish this? You think people would regard it as sacrilege? But I told the whole truth in this. Only dead men can tell the truth in this world. Well, it can be published after I'm dead. What a coward every man is. Surely he'd find it out if he'd just let other people alone and sit down and examine himself. The human race is a race of cowards. And I'm not only marching in that procession, but carrying a banner. But our race, in its poverty, has unquestionably one really effective weapon. Laughter. Power, money, persuasion, supplication. These can lift at a colossal humbug, push it a little, century by century. But only laughter can blow it to rags and atoms at a blast. Against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand.
Call this a government? Or just look at it and see what it's like. Here's the law. Standing ready to take a man's son away from him. A man's own son. Which he's had all the trouble and all the anxiety and all the expense of reason. Just as you got that son raised at last and ready to go out and work and do something for him and give him a rest, the law up and goes for him. And they call that government. It's a wonderful government. Wonderful. Over the town, there was a free nigger from Ohio, a mulatter, most as white as a white man. You know, the whitest shirt you ever seen, too, and the shiniest hat. And there ain't a man in town has got as fine clothes as what he had. What do you think? They said he was a professor in a college and could talk all kinds of languages and just knowed everything. Then he got worse. They said he could vote when he was home. Well, that let me out. Thinks what is this country coming to? It was election day, and I was just about to go and vote myself if I weren't too drunk to get there. They told me that there was a state in this country where they would let that nigger vote. I draw that. I says, I'll never vote again. Them the very words I said, they all hurt me. And this country can rot for all of me. I'll never vote again as long as I live.
During the 40 years I've been playing professional humorists before the public, I've had for company 78 other American humorists. Each and every one of them rose in my time, became conspicuous and popular, and by vanished. Why did they perish? Because they were merely humorists, and humorists of the mere sort can't survive. Humor is only a fragrance, a decoration. Often it's merely an odd trick of speech and of spelling, and presently fashion passes, and the fame along with it. Humor must not professedly teach, and it must not professedly preach, but it must do both if it would live forever. And by forever, I mean 30 years.
If the humor came of its own accord and uninvited, I've always allowed it a place in my sermon. But I was not writing the sermon for the sake of humor. I should have written the sermon just the same, whether any humor applied for admission or not. I'm saying these vain things in this frank way because I'm a dead person speaking from the grave. Even I would be too modest to say them in life. I think we never become really and genuinely our entire selves until we are dead. And not then, until we've been dead years and years. People should start dead. Then they'd be honest so much earlier. I look at that face again that was growing dearer and dearer to me every day. Would I bring her back to life if I could do it? I would not. If a word would do it, I would beg for strength to withhold the word. And I would have the strength, I'm sure of it. In her loss, I'm almost bankrupt. My life is a bitterness, but I'm content. She has been enriched with the most precious of all gifts. That gift which makes all other gifts mean and poor. Death.
What's he doing this night? Miss Jean is dead.
It's all a dream. A grotesque and foolish dream. Nothing exists but you. And you are but a thought. A vagrant thought. A useless thought. A homeless thought. You know what Jean's favorite music was?
Yes. Yes, she always seemed to care most for the Schubert Impromptu.
Play it, and they got ready to leave with her. At the intermezzo for Susie and the largo for Mrs. Clemens. When I hear the music, I'll know they're starting. I'll just look down and see them go.
Most amiable and charming sir, you shake the sides of the whole world with your merriment.
Home is dear to us all. And now I'm departing to my own home beyond the ocean. Oxford has conferred upon me the highest honor that has ever befallen to my share of this life's prizes. It's the very one I would have chosen as outranking all and any others within the gift of man or state. It makes me proud. And sometimes it makes me humble, too.
Here, here, here.
Many, many years ago, I gathered an incident from Dana's 2 years before the mast. It was like this. There was a presumptuous little self-important skipper in a coasting sloop engaged in the dried apple and kitchen furniture trade. And he was always hailing every ship that came in sight. He did it just to hear himself talk and to air his small grandeur. One day, a majestic Indiaman came plowing by with course on course of canvas towering into the sky, her decks and yard swarming with sailors, her hull burdened to the plimsoll line with a rich freightage of precious spices, lading the breezes with gracious and mysterious odors of the Orient. It was a noble spectacle, a sublime spectacle. Of course, the little skipper popped into the shrouds and squeaked out a hail. "Ship ahoy! What ship is that? And whence and whither?" In a deep and thunderous bass, the answer came back through the speaking trumpet. "The Begum of Bengal. 142 days out from Canton, with a cargo of spices homeward bound. What ship is that?" Well, it just crushed that poor little creature's vanity flat. He squeaked out most humbly, "Only the Mary Ann, 14 hours out from Boston, bound for Kittery Point, with nothing to speak of." Oh, what an eloquent word, that "only," to express the depths of his humbleness. That is just my case. During just 1 hour in the 24, not more, I pause and reflect in the stillness of the night, with the echoes of your English welcome still lingering in my ears. And then I'm humble. Then I'm properly meek. And for that little while, I am only the Mary Ann, 14 hours out, cargoed with vegetables and tinware. But during all the other 23 hours, my vain self-complacency rides high on the white crest of your approval. Then, I'm a stately Indiaman, plowing the great seas under a cloud of canvas, and laden with the kindest words that have ever been vouchsafed to any wandering alien in this world, I think. Then, I am the Begum of Bengal. 142 days out from Canton.
Homeward bound. Life itself is only a vision, a dream. In a little while, you will be alone in shoreless space to wander its limitless solitudes, for you will remain a thought, and by your nature, inextinguishable, indestructible. I, your poor servant, have revealed you to yourself and set you free. Dream other dreams, and better.